Welcome to the Soul Mirror. I'm your host, Shreya. Today, we are diving into a realm where intuition, identity, and inner direction intersect. Joining me is the remarkable Caleb Matthews, motivational speaker, dream interpreter, and spiritual strategist. Someone who has spent over 2 decades helping people decipher the silent signals within and step into their true design. In this conversation, we'll explore the idea of a personal line, like inner compass that shapes our clarity, our purpose, and the bold decisions that define our journey. Let's step into the soul's quiet corridors and bring those whispers into focus. Welcome, Caleb. I'm honored to have you on my show.
Thank you, Shreya. It's good to be back with you again and on your show here and your podcast. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much. And Caleb, what does the phrase personal line from within mean to you? And how do you, we begin to recognizing it in our everyday lives?
Yes, though that's a great question. One that's going to open up the conversation here. One I wanted to bring to the table today, and that is the line. What does the line mean to me? Well, it's a moment of decision, right? Like a line is this picture that we can each have, like this line in the sand. We've often heard that phrase where we draw a line in the sand to see what choice we're going to make, whether in one direction or the other. And having a personal line to me means those things in those areas, those core values, those convictions in my life that I'm not willing to negotiate on, even if it means going against the grain of culture or public opinion or perspective. But those personal things that have been put in my DNA of design, my purpose, and my conviction in my life and with God that I'm not willing to negotiate on. And life will definitely challenge me and it will challenge us to see if we're going to redraw the lines or if we're going to give in on the lines that we've drawn. So for me, it means those lines of personal conviction that I've drawn within myself to help me within my personal resolve, spirit, soul, and body within the DNA of my design.
Yes. And also, when someone feels disconnected from that inner line, what is the first gentle step that they can take to realign?
Mm. I would say it is to step back from the chaos in the present moment because our world is built on chaos and busyness and really being centered in on the HPA, what I call the here perspective advantage. And it's good to be present, but if we're too present and we're not looking at the MPA, which is the multiple perspective advantage, we can lose our way on the journey of life in our walk with God and not see the bigger picture. What I like to illustrate is more or less the illustration of like a sporting event, right? Like if you go to a cricket event or you go to a baseball game or a football game or whatever sport you put in there, and you see that there are different elements within the game, everyone's got their own specific role and function. So the players in the field, they have their position. The coaches who are coaching the players have their position. The vendors who walk up and down the aisles that are looking to sell hot dogs and drinks and food and concession to the people have their position. And then there's even those who are sitting in the elite boxes that are the owners and the rich people that have the better seats than the regular people. But I like to say that when we're looking at the bigger picture, it's a good idea to just not play the game. And what I mean by that is for us to truly walk in our DNA design, walk in our line, and really get a bigger picture and get out of feeling stuck and get back into alignment, we need to be on a different playing field than what most other people would be encouraged to. And that is to get out of the game that puts us in a box. And what I mean by that is when others are dictating what we should be doing or our function or position, then it's time for us to pull out and say, okay, what game am I playing? Where am I engaged in? Is this pushing me off of my own personal line away from my DNA of design? Because if it is, it's time to disengage from that game and align back to the playing field that we are always built for by God. And that's what I believe.
Yes, that really makes sense. So many people move through life on autopilot, and like hearing your perspective helps ground that idea that realignment isn't dramatic, it's intentional. And also, you bridge intuition with transformation. How does someone distinguish between an inner nudge and simple mental noise?
Mm. Mental noise usually comes only within the filter of our soul without connection to the spirit. And that's where I go back into the SSB model principle that I believe each one of us have been created in the image of God with a trichotomous being, not just a dichotomous being, but a trichotomous being. And mental noise is when our soul, mind, will, and emotions is processing, as you said, Shreya, on autopilot, really what's happening and responding and reacting to what's happening around us versus being proactive. And being proactive is when our soul is under governance of our spirit, and our spirit is under governance of the Holy Spirit, of the Spirit of life of God. And really, our soul, left to its own devices without the Spirit, without the infusion of the Spirit of life, can be processing the mental noise versus the inner nudges. And the inner nudges comes from the spirit. It doesn't just come from the soul, but it comes from our spark, our flame within, the imprint that God puts in our life, how he speaks to us in dreams of the night season, of nudges throughout the day. You and I, after this conversation, or our audience, they could step onto public transit, the bus, or go to the park, or go to the university, or go to the supermarket, and could have this amazing, unique experience or this encounter with somebody they've never seen before. Or maybe a friend comes up to us and says, this, and this, and it's a specific parable or it's a message that we've been waiting for an answer on in some area of our life. Those are the inner nudges, not just the mental noise of the busyness of clocking in for the 9 to 5 or doing our usual stuff that's happening and processing to our mental capacity in our soul. But our spirit is when we have those special nudges, those C links that are constantly speaking to us. And we step back just for a moment, even if it's just for a few seconds or a few minutes, and just say, okay, what is life trying to tell me? What is God trying to speak to me? What is this a picture of? Those inner nudges are coming from our spirit. And I would say we just have to let our spirit speak to us more and be open to that and not just try to control everything within our soul, because we can't control everything. We have to allow ourselves, like a sail on a sailboat, to be a free agent for the things of God. That's one of the things I always like to say. When I put my hand up and I just say, God, I'm a free agent for the things of heaven, for the things of God, for the things of the spirit, those inner nudges. And when we have that posture, and I encourage everybody in our audience to have that posture to say, I am a free agent. My spirit is open to the inner nudges, to the things of God to speak to me. Then we can start to have that alignment, spirit, soul, and body.
Yes, that is so beautiful. And also, have you ever personally mistaken one for the other? And what did that teach you?
I have. I think we all have. I would say, in fact, if someone says that they have never mistaken one for the other, they wouldn't be truthful. Yes, I have. And for me, what that looks like is when you take something that you think is an inner nudge or it's a divine guidance by God, but it's actually coming from your soul, and not from within and not from God. What that can look like is it can derail us. It definitely derailed me in those few times. I can think of examples where I took something that I truly believed was from God. It was an inner nudge, but actually it was just my own soul. It was something that I projected onto my soul, and it didn't come from the spirit. And the way that we can recognize if something is coming from our soul, our own divine will and emotions versus spirit versus the divine influence of God is doing the fruit test, I like to say, because there's a scripture in the Bible that says, test and judge and weigh and test the spirits to see if they're of God. And what does that look like? Well, we'll know a tree. Jesus said, you'll know a tree by inspecting its what? Its fruit. And therefore, the fruit test is something that I would encourage everybody in. That's something that I have to come back to myself and do analysis, a census of my senses of that. And that is testing the fruit of something. What do I mean by that? Well, if there's a specific direction or a message or an inspiration or a direction that I feel that I have in my life, I like to say, okay, does this fruit line up? Does this decision that I'm about to make, does this perspective or this conviction that I have, does this line up with the fruit of the Spirit of God from that divine influence, that inner nudge? Or is this fruit not congruent to the principles of God? Is this something where it's more or less man-centered or woman-centered, to use an example for men and women? And that, what I mean by that is it more ego-centered? Is it more me, myself, and I versus being in the service of God and the service of others? Because really the nature and the character and the fruit of the Spirit, the fruit of God, is to have character and to make ourselves of no reputation, because that's what Jesus taught. Really, the character message is to exalt God first and to lift up others before lifting up ourselves. And coming back full circle, how we know whether it's coming from ourselves versus the Spirit is if it's ego-centered, if it's centered around dominance, and not dominance in the right way, dominance in the unhealthy way. If it's centered around ego, if it's centered around selfishness, if it's centered around just ourselves, but without that partnership with the Spirit of God, with God, then we know it's not from the Spirit, it's from the soul, it's from the ego. And that's what I would encourage your audience is to do an inventory check, do a fruit analysis, inspect the fruit of your decisions and of the direction and of a conviction that you have to see, does this line up with the Spirit or does this line up with my own soul without the governance of the Spirit?
Yes. I appreciate that honesty, and I think it shows listeners that discernment is like a skill built over time and not a greed or like a gift reserved for a chosen few. And also, dreams play a significant role in your work. How do dreams reveal someone's purpose or hidden direction?
Mm. They do, because this wonderful reality is that every person, every person on this planet, from India to Mexico, from the United States and Canada, all the way to Europe and Asia, Australia, Africa, everywhere across this beautiful planet, every single person, every man, every woman, every single individual on the earth is a dreamer. Why? Because we were created in the image of God. And if we're created in God's image, therefore we are the result of his dream. And if we are the result of his dream, that means that we dream because scientifically, we all dream. In fact, by the time we reach 60 years of age, we'll have slept 20 years of our life. That's a third of life spent in the dream season, in the dream state. And these messages are speaking, these sea links, these mysteries of the night season are unraveling themselves in the night season to everybody across this planet. And there are codes, there are messages, there are divine directions and instruction within the dream season. And for anybody out there that might be skeptical, they think, okay, well, I'm not sure I believe that. Well, my challenge to you would be, why then is the construct and within our DNA and within our biological construct, why do we have so much time spent sleeping in the dream state? Why would there to be that big chunk of our lives if we don't dream? And therefore, there is gold, there is treasure to be unpacked, to be locked within the dream season. And dreams do direct us. They've directed our ancient forefathers, our ancestors, all the way from the ancient scriptures to modern day history, to people that we read about in history as well, like Harriet Tubman and Joan of Arc, Winston Churchill, George Washington, people, Gandhi, people of influence. You know, they all have dreams of the night season that influence their work and influence their lives, and therefore we should take note. We should take note that there are messages in this season that are waiting for us to step into them and say, okay, I need to take this seriously. And part of taking that seriously is journaling. I encourage journaling and writing dreams down, because when you write your dreams of night season down, that's activating your subconscious for recollection, for dream recall, and treasuring them. Because if you treasure your dreams are just going to continue to unravel in the best possible way and manifest. If you don't treasure them, just like anything, if we don't go to the gym, we don't go to university to learn, we don't go to the supermarket to get more groceries or to get more sustenance and food, if we don't go somewhere and we don't steward the gift, then we're not going to be able to accelerate in that. So dreams are very, very crucial, especially within our spirit, soul, and body construct framework, to understand these mysteries.
Yes. That's such an intriguing contrast. And also, you have spoken across vastly different spaces, from New Age festivals to Bible collages, like colleges. And like, what common thread do you notice about people seeking clarity?
The common denominator across all the different areas that I've been in my life in the last 20, 25 years in these areas is this appetite, this hunger for understanding and for direction, and really to make sense of why we're here, and what our purpose is, and our design, really, of man's search for meaning, of woman's search for meaning, of our search for really finding our place on this divine tapestry. The hunger for knowing what the answer is really the common thread across the lines. And that's where the links between the spirit and the soul and the body is absolutely crucial in connecting cultures, connecting peoples, connecting these divine nudges in the daytime and the night season, and the hunger for understanding. That's really what the common thread is. And the common thread also is another thread, is time. Is we all have a vial of time, and time is the one currency that, Shreya, you and I and our audience, even listening to this, cannot get back in the exact same way after this podcast is finished, after these next few minutes in this day is finished, and we move on to the next. Time is something that unites us, that connects us. And that is what is the common thread, and what distinguishes individuals like ourselves and those listening from others, and puts us ahead, almost like on the grand racetrack of life, is what we do with that time. I think of one of the famous quotes from one of my favorite novels, Lord of the Rings, by J.R.R. Tolkien, a great book, a great novel, great series, made into great movies. And one thing that the wise Gandalf the Grey, the great teacher, said to Frodo is, all we have to do and all we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And that stewarding of time is that common thread that will set us apart when we steward that time. And how do we steward that time? By hungering and thirsting for truth. And then what does that look like? It means stepping into our DNA of design and purpose, spirit, soul, and body, to be everything that God created us to be, to leave nothing on the shelf. Because at the end of my life, I don't want a shelf to say, oh, there are things that you left on me that could have been used. No, I want that shelf to be empty. And so, to our audience today, listening right now in live time, as you listen to this podcast when it comes out, I want to say to you and encourage you, pursue your DNA of design, pursue that inner line in the sand that you've drawn, that conviction you've made with God, even no matter what the cost, no matter what peer part pressure a culture says, pursue your purpose, because there's no time to waste. There's no time like the present. This vial of time that connects us is something that is infused within the DNA of your design that God has put there, because God exists outside of time. He's outside of it, but you've been put here at this time in history for such a time as this.
Yes, that, like, it's compelling to hear how universal the desire for direction is, even when the languages or frameworks differ. And also, many people feel called to something greater but fear disrupting the status quo. What does one step into their calling without being paralyzed by uncertainty?
Stepping into the call and that we've had upon our lives, placed upon our lives by God, without being paralyzed. What that looks like is starting with that internal decision, that conviction, that construct. And I talk about the three C's often within my C-Link business and my brand, and that is construct, conform, and contract. And it starts by building a construct within our own lives with our DNA design with God. And the big one that connects, that is the bridge between construct and contract, is conform. And within conform are the words con and then form. And it is my conviction that one of the greatest con jobs in our world today is this formation of this peer pressure of conning and conforming to the con job of conformity. And really, what it means to make a contract within our DNA design with God, that's the first step. That really is the first step. And that decision that we make within our mind is, God, I'm going to go there with you, even if everybody else is against me. I am not going to conform, as it says in the book of Romans. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world system, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So it means exchanging conformity with being transformed. What does the word trance mean? It means coming into an encounter, an ecstatic experience with a divine purpose, with divine being, with God, with the Spirit of God, with the Ancient One, with the Creator of the ends of the earth, the universe, that transformation, being formed into the image of God as God has given us, even back into the original design as into Eden. That transformation means coming into that experience of that ecstatic ecstasis of being formed into the original blueprint, the design of God's image. So be not conformed to the image of the world, but be transformed. How does that happen? By the renewing of our minds. How do we renew our minds, our souls? By our spirit governing our mind. How does our spirit governing our mind happen? When we yield to God and say, God, I give you my spirit, soul, and body to be governed by the Spirit of life, the Holy Spirit, the same Spirit that brooded over the face of the deep in creation, that God placed there by his master hand. It means being a free agent for the things of the Spirit, for the things of heaven. That's what it looks like to make a step of decision to renew our minds. How do we renew our minds? By intentionally making decisions every single day, every second, every minute, every hour, within our inner resolve, in our inner line to say, I am going to set my mind on things above. I am going to focus on my blueprint. I am going to focus on the reason why I've been put on the earth, not what other people's decisions or influences or perspectives of me is, but the way I was created, the image that you've created me in. That is how we step across that line and make that decision. That one step is to be renewed by the transforming of our mind, spirit, soul, and body, not conforming to the image of the world.
Yes, that perspective is so, so powerful. And I think it reassures listeners that courage is not the absence of fear, it's responding to a deeper truth within. And this is a wonderful conversation with you. Thank you for sharing so much. And if after this my listeners want to connect with you, then what's the best way?
Best way to contact me, connect with me is twofold. First of all, my YouTube channel at the C-Link. So I've started my YouTube channel here now in the last few months on youtube.com/at sign. So at the C-Link, SEELINK. You can follow me on my adventures with the C-Link. I post weekly motivational, inspiring content, everything from little short videos from 30 seconds to a few minutes to longer form videos of 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes long. And it's inspiring, motivational, complimentary content on my YouTube channel. If you've resonated with anything I've said today, I invite you, whether you're in India, whether you're in Mexico, whether you're in North America, Europe, Asia, wherever you are, Africa, in the world, Australia, please tune in and subscribe to my YouTube channel. And then you can follow me more on my archives and listening to my podcasts and some of my own personal content that I've created on my website, the C-Link website, www.calebmatthews.net. That is my C-Link website. We can see podcasts such as in the archives, just like this one on the Soul Mirror that will eventually be posted there as well, because I love to feature every podcast that I've spoken on there and all the reviews and everything. You can find me on there as well. And of course, on Instagram, Caleb on the Runway, and my Twitter page, Caleb Matthews without the E. But that's a little bit where you can find me. And thank you, Shreya, so much for this conversation. Some of my favorite podcasts are always when I'm with anybody that's connected to a Veek team. You guys and ladies are very, very much some of my favorite people to speak with, because I know when we collaborate, good conversations always manifest.
Yes, thank you for all your kind words, and I will definitely make sure to attach all these videos and links below so that the listeners can find them easily and get in touch with you and know more from you, because you're truly, truly an amazing person. And to all my listeners, this conversation reminds us that clarity is not gifted from the outside, it's awakened from within. Your personal line is already speaking. The challenge is learning to trust its guidance. If today's dialogue starts something in you, take a small step toward your inner direction. Explore, reflect, and dare to listen more deeply. Thank you.